First of all, from a prevention standpoint, I always recommend, strongly recommend, that people keep purses, backpacks, and such away from beds, resting areas. So just a simple matter of if someone comes home with a backpack and they're worried about spreading bed bugs and all, putting it into the front foyer, sorry. Canadianism coming through here. Putting it in the front foyer, putting it into even a plastic bucket, something like that will help to contain any bed bugs that might be on and around. I recommend these actually for schools if you're worried about, or if you have employees that have had problems with bed bugs at their own places of residence. These plastic buckets work quite well. And certainly keeping you're sort of breaking a pathway. Now there's still a chance that they can walk down the hallway and into other areas to get to the resting surfaces. But if you make it that much harder for them, it's going to take some time for them to find these areas, and it's a better chance that they're not going to transition to these sites of infestation. Certainly for visiting nurses and similar people, keeping your stuff in the main living areas, away from the couch, centrally, or in a kitchen or something like that is a major step, because again, these things don't necessarily fly. They don't fly. They don't jump. They can run, but they can't run that particular fast. And their preference is to hide and to be under areas. So if you come in with your stuff, unless the floor is crawling with them or there's a large infestation around the sofa or something like that, it's not likely that you're going to pick them up. A lot of times when people do pick them up, it's because they've been in direct contact with an infested site. For instance, I know there's been some pest management professionals who have picked them up accidentally, but it's usually because they're handling the bed, they're moving it around, and they happen to brush up against a site where a bed bug might be. And they're almost like little Velcro, pieces of Velcro with legs, the way that they can sort of just hook on to things and be carried around. So if you don't contact them, or in an area where there's low chances of contacting them, they're less likely to be picked up. As was mentioned before, dry heat works very well. The clothes dryer, medium to high heat. Now, there was a range given by Mohammed with respect to how long you run a dryer for. You need to hit at least 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Most dryers, I would say, are going to achieve that in about 20 minutes to half an hour, and that's on a medium to high heat. Now, where the variability comes in, if you happen to wash the clothes and then you dry them, then you need a longer cycle. You need to go as hot as the temperature, as hot as the fabric can withstand, full cycle wash, full cycle dry. Okay, and there's some reasoning behind this, in that you can have a cooling effect with the water in the clothes. And if you have, say, cottons, where you usually tend to have a bigger volume that you're going to be dealing with, you're going to want to put that through a hotter cycle, a fuller cycle than, say, delicates and that sort of thing. So this is a good measure, and if you have a shoe rack in the dryer that prevents stuff from being tumbled around, you can put things on the shoe rack and let it run for some time as well. Vacuum cleaners are good for direct removal of bed bugs, but you have to realize that proper disposal of the contents of that vacuum is very important. You can contain a lot of bed bugs. Will you get every single bed bug? No, not necessarily. But you have to. But you can quickly contain a lot of bed bugs this way. If it is a vacuum cleaner that has a bag in it, when you're finished with it, take the bag out, put a piece of tape over it, and put it into a plastic bag, and then discard it. If it's a wet, dry vacuum, hot soapy water should be used when cleaning it out. You don't want to leave it just after you vacuumed an area. You just don't want to leave it sitting there, because bed bugs will crawl out of the vacuum cleaner. For some reason, they are tough enough to withstand the travel along that hose, that corrugated hose, and into the vacuum itself. If you try and do that with German cockroaches, for example, and I have done this at times. Generally, the smashing around as they're heading down the hose will kill them, will dismember them quite nicely. But with bed bugs, that doesn't happen. It's interesting what we get up to. This is not a vacuum cleaner, but it's a steamer. It's a steam generator. It's not a carpet cleaner like a steam cleaner that you would use for carpets. This is actually a unit that injects steam into surfaces and heats up areas. If we're going along this way with the steamer, we're going to have an area that's going to be covered with high temperature, and this is a way for it immediately killing them. I'll give you the temperature range in a second, but I did some work with this when we first started because we had nothing like the standard heat treatment units that were shown, and with insecticide resistance, we had to have another alternative, and this was the alternative that we had come up with. And with the right temperature range, you could actually push the steam through this carpeted baseboard a 1/4 inch against the wall and receive a hot enough temperature against the wall that would control bed bugs. However, you do have to watch it because too much heat against the wall actually peels the baseboard away, and then your boss gets really angry with you because you've damaged the surface, or else too hot a temperature on latex or on wallpaper will also damage that. So you do have to be careful. Test it on an unseen site before you take it full stream and start steaming everywhere. Microfibers and other materials you have to be careful of as well. And I have a Lazy Boy chair at home that is microfiber, and it's beautiful the way the microfiber all goes one way, except an unfortunate stripe across it, where I decided to do some experimentation to see how far the steam goes into it, and I pulled the steamer across the chair, and it reoriented all the microfibers permanently in the other direction. So there's like a different color stripe across the chair. My wife was not too happy with that, so now the chair resides in my son's bedroom. Okay, the typical temperatures that you want to hit is 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit right after the steamer has been moved. So as you're moving the steaming wand this way, this is a non-contact infrared thermometer that is very useful. You just shoot it right behind it, and if you're getting those types of temperatures right behind it in this area, then you've hit a really a good range of temperatures to control bed bugs. You'll notice that these temperatures are much higher than if you were to do a heat treatment, and the reason being is you really need to raise that temperature up quickly because it's going to cool down really fast right after that. We have water, some vapor left in this area, and the evaporative cooling will decrease the temperatures quite rapidly. So to get a surface kill and to get any sort of penetration into the fabric, these are the sort of temperatures you have to hit to get a reasonable and reliable kill on using this method. For penetration, we're looking at, it depends on the fabric and the fill density. Memory foam, the temperature doesn't penetrate very well, but then again, memory foam is so tight that bed bugs are not likely to be in those areas. But along stitch lines, stitch holes, with batting, that sort of thing, reasonable penetration is up to 3/4 of an inch into the fabric. So mattress, up to 3/4 of an inch into the fabric. And then for gaps, holes, or areas where bed bugs can sort of slot themselves into, you can get 2 3/8 of an inch into a gap. Some people recommend putting a towel over the nozzle. They say that that's hotter because if you put this towel over the nozzle and then you hold your hand underneath it, it feels hotter. That actually reduces the penetration of the steam into the fabric. So there shouldn't be any towel over the nozzle. Towels are typically used when you're cleaning because you heat up the surface and the towel helps to wipe things up, but it's not good for bed bug control. I get a lot of questions about nozzle shapes. There's usually 3 types that are associated with these steam generators. There's the 2-inch here, there's the triangle here, and there's a floor brush here. There's not really any difference in penetration with those, but there is a difference in how fast you can move the wand across the surface and expect to get control. The triangle seems to be the sort of the nice balance between the floor brush and the 2-inch. The 2-inch, if you're steaming with that, you're doing small areas, but you're doing it really fast. And the floor brush, you're doing larger areas, but you're doing it much slower. The triangle seems to be a bit of a balance between the two. And that's the one that's typically used for the most part during this work. If you're going to look at steam generators, do not go cheap. Do not buy a retail version, buy a commercial version. These retail versions, the boilers are too small, and they're not going to have the capacity, and then they might not have the attachments available. This one in particular shoots out a very fine pin stream of steam, and one of the pest control managers who bought one of these things, because for $200 or $120 they could have this little steam shark he could chase bed bugs around. But when you use a pin stream steam against a bed bug, you can see how far a bed bug can actually fly. As you propel it off the surface, and it lands about 8 feet away, gets up and walks away. So you need to have something that you're going to distribute the steam over the surface. So a lot of these commercial units have the attachments that are needed for this. There are 2 types of steam generators. One, you fill up with water, you heat it up, and then you use it. And then once the water's gone, that's it. You have to cool it down, take the pressure off, refill it. That's this type of unit right here. You're looking at around anywhere from about $800 to about $2,000 roughly for a steam unit. I recommend with that type of unit you get 2, so that you have one heating up as the other one's cooling down and refilling, and you don't have to wait around. There are more expensive units, and they run anywhere from about $2,500 going up to $6,000, and that's these units. These ones you can fill as you work. So it has a water reservoir that continually pulls water into the steamer unit, and then you can use the steam continuously. Yes?
So a wallpaper steamer is not going to work? I mean, I know a wallpaper steamer comes with different size end pieces, and I've seen it take latex paint on the wall.
Yeah, the wallpaper steamer would work, but the caution there is, and it's usually used at a higher temperature, and it's usually there's no control over the steam output. Whereas these units here have a dial that you can dial it back, and typically you're wanting like a 5 or 10% steam, really dry steam. You're still going to put water into the surface, but the wallpaper steamers are meant to put out a lot of water and get that temperature up to 200 Fahrenheit or higher. For cold treatments, seasonal temperatures, I recommend against taking the furniture and throwing it outside during the winter time, especially this winter time, because there was no winter, I don't think. But there's a lot of factors that go into trying to freeze bed bugs, or any insect for that matter. And you're not only looking at the cold temperature, you're looking at the humidity, you're looking at solar radiation that's warming items up and that sort of thing. So you really have to be careful. Quite often we don't see the temperatures sustained long enough and dry enough outside to control, so I don't recommend seasonal temperatures be used. For reliable control, we've just finished a big, fairly large study, and reasonably, if you can hit 0 degrees Fahrenheit for about 4 days, you can control all stages of bed bugs reliably. And this is, keep in mind, if you put something bulky in the freezer, you have to make sure you get it down to that 0 before you start the timer. We may be able to cut it back a little bit, but depending on how bulky the material is, 4 days is a pretty reasonable number, and for the variability. The one thing you do have to watch out for is that any freezer that is above approximately 8 degrees Fahrenheit you do not want to use. So, you know, you might have a freezer that's at just below freezing at 32 Fahrenheit, or even at 10, even at 10 Fahrenheit. That's not cold enough. Bed bugs will survive that. You might not kill, you might not have all of them survive, but certainly some are going to survive. So reasonably, and we, when we did our initial studies, we took the studies out for 10 days. So essentially, you have bed bugs surviving for up to 10 days at temperatures that are above 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So try and get it down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit and hold it for 4 days. There's another system that pest control companies are using. It's called the Cryonite or Rapid Freeze system, and it shoots dry ice flakes on the surface. It's a control item, or it's a surface control type of treatment, and the dry ice is coming out at close to 100 degrees below zero. So of course, anything that it touches is instantly going to freeze. And that's another system that's available that you might hear of if you ask a company to come in and do control. They might provide this as an option. A lot of surface control. From what I've heard, there's little penetration except for where you're pushing the dry ice flakes directly into cracks and crevices. Mattress encasements offer a couple of different ways that they help. If you have a bed that you've received a control in an area, and you have some bed bugs that might be still on the mattress or the box spring, or you're worried about that, encase it in a mattress encasement. There's a number of products that are available retail as well as commercially, and you basically encase the mattress in sort of like a mattress cover. You also encase the box spring as well. These work to, first of all, they enclose bed bugs, and the bed bugs will eventually starve and die. The one risk is if you happen to cut the mattress encasement open, or it happens to tear, that's when if bed bugs are still there, they can crawl out. But the other important thing I think has more value is when you put these encasements on, you simplify the habitat. You prevent all these nooks and crannies and cracks and crevices where bed bugs can hide. They can still infest the mattress encasement, but when they get on the encasement, they're a lot easier to see. The droppings are a lot easier to see. There's fewer cracks and crevices that they can wedge themselves into, and that's I think the true value of the mattress encasement. For hotels and other places, if you were to encase the mattresses, it makes it far easier to inspect the area if you suspect that there is a bed bug infestation on site in the room. Hunt and kill method. Now, this is a method that we've seen being used when we have people that are just completely destitute. Buying a fogger to try and control the bed bugs at this point would basically might be someone's lunch or half a week of dinners because of the cost. We have found it effective, not completely effective, but we have found it effective in some cases where people have time to go through their place and literally nitpick their apartment or place of residence for bed bugs. And this requires a tape. So you can buy a roll of tape, a business card or a credit card or an old credit card or something. In New York City, they're using New York City subway cards because they're plasticized, and they basically go around and they dig out every crack and crevice looking for bed bugs and either squashing them or picking them up with tape. And it's not the most desirable method to use because you will leave bed bugs. You cannot get every single bed bug with this, but we have seen cases where people have been in really destitute situations, and they've been able to reduce the bed bug bites from 200 to 500 a night down to maybe 5 bed bugs every couple of weeks or so. So it's certainly not the best circumstance, but it's there, and bed bugs can be sought out and controlled with this method if necessary, or at least abated with this method. This is the level of detail that you have to go to when you're trying to look for bed bugs. Here's the edge of a mattress. This is piping right here along here, and you can see where I've got my thumb and I'm prying up this piping, and not only that, but I'm prying up this extra flat, because that's the level of detail you have to go through. It takes time to go through and look at every crack and crevice, to go through and inspect every stitch seam for bed bug droppings, and if it's a pillow top or even or some sort of plush type of, you have to go through and look along all those seams. It takes time. But in some cases, people sometimes have more time than they have money to deal with this. And if they're looking for an abatement, I would much prefer to see this being done than for someone to go out and look for some garden chemical and try and apply that in a desperate attempt to obtain control of bed bugs. And along that line, there has been cases where bed bug control has been a source of entertainment for people. So if you get the kids involved and make it a competition, believe it or not, there's 1917, and daughter Diana later wrote that they held nightly bed bug spearing competition using hat pins, because this was the way that they dealt with bed bugs. They would reduce their number by setting the kids loose and seeing how many bed bugs they can pick up on a hat pin, and that was the way, and it was a control method. It wasn't a perfect control method, but when it comes down to not being able to do anything else, certainly getting someone in to look at the issue and deal with it on a short and long-term basis is the best way to do it. But when that fails, then this is one thing that people can use if their backs are up against a wall. Okay, what not to use? One thing I suggest not to use are over-the-counter foggers. Unless you have bed bugs dripping from the ceiling and you want to use it as an initial stage knockdown type of thing, and the ceiling is popcorn ceiling and you can't run a vacuum or something over top of it, that's the only time I can see foggers ever having some sort of, and even then I would prefer to see professional fogging done rather than the over-the-counter foggers. We have had cases, and there's been some work at Ohio State University that have shown that if you were to set a fogger loose in a room and you were to just simply put a piece of paper over top of a bunch of bed bugs, they're going to survive. There's enough of a blind spot in there that as the fog comes down and settles down, they're not going to be touched. And then in addition, we have resistance in the population, and the chemicals that are used in the foggers are the chemicals that the bed bugs are resistant, and some populations are resistant to the point of 12,000 times what we would normally see in a susceptible population of bed bugs. In other words, it would be more efficacious to take a bottle of bed bug fogging solution and hit them over the head with it than it would be to try and fog. Okay, so there is application sometimes with fogging, but that should not be the method that's used as the first and only resort method. We do not want to see garden or agricultural insecticides used in buildings, and we've already had a case in this town where use of agricultural insecticides cost a tremendous amount of money because the room had to be stripped down to the studs and rebuilt. Flammable products, there's a lot of comments on the internet about rubbing alcohol. I've been battling incessantly with people that recommend to public health nurses that they should carry a little bottle of rubbing alcohol around and spritz it on their shoes and spritz it on their pants if they feel that they've been in an area that has had bed bugs. First of all, the amount that you're going to spritz on your clothes is not enough to kill bed bugs. And secondly, if you were to spritz enough on it to kill bed bugs, then you risk yourself becoming a human torch because rubbing alcohol is flammable. So don't use it. I would much rather see, and we'll talk about for public health nurses, home visitors, we'll talk about it later. But something as simple as a wet wipe type of cloth, disposable cloth, wiping that around your shoes is going to be far more efficacious than any sort of rubbing alcohol that you can use. Homemade products are products that do not have proper labels, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into multifamily housing. And then products that complain that they're not an insecticide, but they kill bed bugs. And we're getting a lot of, there's a law at the federal level that says that because of marketing or because of the cost of registration of chemicals, there are some chemicals that are known as generally regarded as safe, and generally they're natural products and that sort of thing. So we get and they have been exempt from full EPA registration. Now the problem is that a lot of people have picked up on that and have gone around and started proclaiming that some of this stuff, and a lot of it's snake oil, that this kills bed bugs. And in some cases, if you drown them in the stuff, yes, it's going to control them. But if you just spray it on the surface and let bed bugs run around, they'll be happily running around forever. And typically these products say, well, it's not an insecticide, but it kills bed bugs. Well, I'm sorry to burst the bubble, but anything that kills bed bugs is an insecticide. It's just whether it's a natural or however it's marketed. But be careful with those products because they generally do not have EPA claims. They do not have proper efficacy work done on those products. And I will leave it at that.